We're back. The process.
Back with the process.
We've got 2 episodes dedicated to pre-production.
Two big ones to pre-production. Yeah, pre-production is where you make your film, to be honest, in narrative filmmaking. So last time we left off, I think, at hiring crew. Today, we're starting to talk about the remainder of our pre-production items, beginning with the tech scout. So, Megan, tell us what the purpose of a tech scout is. Who goes to this thing? What are they looking for? What happens?
Yeah, so this is where you're going back to your locations, your selected locations with your producer, your director, your DP, your gaffer, and ideally your sound person. And frankly, depending on the size of the production, those folks might have people within their departments that they want to bring on as well for the tech scout, because you are going to each location and you are looking at every logistical element that you need to factor into the shoot. You are really starting to get into the conversation around shot lists. Your gaffer and your DP and your director are having lots of conversation around lighting and getting that planned out. So it's a super important day, couple of days, depending on how many locations you have, to really get into thinking through exactly what you want and exactly how things can play out and planning for it. So like for my part as the producer, I'm looking at everything from parking. What is there parking available nearby so that anyone who's self-reporting, or if we have a production vehicle, or we've got our grip trucks, etc., they can park nearby and easily load in. Load in. How are they loading gear in? Are the doorways big enough? Is it an easy entrance? Are we going to be dealing with elevators and a ton of stairs and ramps? Where are the electrical outlets? That's another sort of like super important, but maybe overlooked if if you're just starting out. Like, where can that you're going to have batteries, you're going to have lights, you're going to have just you know you might have a wardrobe person who needs to plug in a steamer. Like, you need to know where your electrical outlets are, because then you're also plotting out, where are we charging batteries, where are we staging gear, where is the makeup artist setting up. So it's really getting into the nitty gritty of all these things. The sound person is there, like, are we shooting at a restaurant or in someone's apartment with like an old, very loud refrigerator that we need to account for? Does the sound person need to bring sound blankets? Really going through all of that so that all of those sort of more logistical elements are planned for. Um, so that's kind of in my producerial hat, logistical focus. But I'm curious, on our tech scout for Permanent Scar, what were you focused on mostly? What were you and Bobby, the DP, talking about, thinking about, working through?
Yeah, I think when we mentioned this during the location scout part of our discussion, but you are really, even at the location scout, thinking about shots and where people are positioned and blocking and things like this. But you're deciding between multiple locations at that stage. Once you get to the tech scout, you've decided this is my location. Now, how am I going to bring this scene to life? And Bobby, the DP, and I had already had a handful of conversations at that stage going into location scouting, but it was kind of taking the ideas that we had discussed about and staging them kind of in real life in the space. So we would have people stand in as our actors and take pictures on our iPhone and think about the framing, like to that level of detail. Because I didn't really want to be on set figuring out blocking for this first time. Of course, there's some of that and you make adjustments, as needed, but we pretty much had every shot blocked, I would say, because of what we captured on the tech scout, just through kind of setting people up and thinking about things. And then kind of in solidifying what we were thinking in terms of framing, composition, blocking, the gaffer could then think about where the light needed to be and be coming from and things like that. So it felt kind of like, we'd get into a space, Bobby and I would talk, we would be setting up shots, thinking about things, and then he would kind of then go talk to the gaffer about how to bring that vision to life. So I would say for the tech scout, I would come in and kind of say my piece and have that conversation and make some decisions and then let people do their jobs from there and kind of get out of the way a little bit. Because yeah, I mean, our gaffer had a big job. We shot our coffee shop at 9 o'clock at night in the pitch black of October, and he completely lit it for day. So they have a lot of work to do, and the tech scout is the time to figure it out because, again, they don't want to be the people on set dragging things down because they haven't figured out where the electrical outlet is or things like that.
Yeah, or they don't have the right light. And
Yeah.
then it's like you got to send a PA to a rental house to go rent the proper lights. And then we either have to switch scenes around or we're just sitting around waiting for that. I have seen DPs capture different levels of um, photos. Like I've been on sets where it's kind of like one or two photos of a frame, not even that level of detail. Like this is the space, this is what the light looks like in the space this time of day, going from there. But Bobby, like he had like frame frame up by frame up photos from our tech scout that then were so paramount in the shot listing process. And like for me as producer and AD on this project, then, being able to reference exactly what y'all have in mind and then working on the shoot schedule, like that was so helpful that he had
Yeah.
this breakout of sort of like every planned shot.
Yeah. And I think that becomes incredibly crucial if you are working with limited time on set, which we definitely were. And I feel like most short films just
Mhm.
will be,
Yeah.
limited in terms of money and therefore in terms of time.
Speaking of starting to put together a shot list, can you talk a bit about what that process looked like and kind of get into the weeds on how you and Bobby went about shot listing, some things that you maybe learned from going through that process, how much you had, what level of vision you had in your head ahead of time versus what was kind of being worked out as we moved through pre-production.
I guess, one thing that's important to note for this project is that I also wrote it. So I did, as I was writing it, I could visualize like what I was visualizing, this also happening. It's not like I was getting a script from a writer and having to kind of location scout and imagine this for the first time. I had pretty clear ideas of what this looked and felt like in my head. And then it was just a matter of kind of finding the places and spaces in real life where that could make sense. But yeah, the shot list process, I feel like for me anyway, sounded kind of scarier and more complicated than it actually is. Like in reality, you are, like we said, you're in the spaces, you're talking about the shots, you're framing up some stuff. And ultimately, the process for this involved Bobby and I just spending many, many hours talking about the script together. We would, we had our information in our heads from the tech scout. Um, and then we would just meet multiple times a week and just talk through each scene and brainstorm shots to kind of make up the scene. And then we would go away and either he or I would line the script, which involves essentially marking up the script with each shot so that you see what shot is covering which part of the script. And you want multiple shots covering each part of the script so that you have flexibility in the edit to cut back and forth to different things. And then we would see if the coverage felt good, and then we would come back and we would rework the shot list based on where we felt like we needed more coverage or where we felt like there was simply too many shots and we needed to streamline. And that's kind of it.
Very meticulously plotted out shot lists, I think, are super important.
Yeah. And also there's a montage scene in Permanent Scar that wasn't as meticulously planned out, right? Like we knew kind of the general locations and spaces in the park we wanted them for that, but that actually was a little bit more free flowing. The actors were improving, like so it can also waver in a script. It's like we know that everything needs to be blocked meticulously. However, this is a space where, the schedule just said like montage, and they were allowed to kind of roam free there.
Are there any shots that we didn't get that you wish we had? Is there anything that we, in retrospect, you would have planned for?
Yeah, I mean, we really didn't get any B-roll at all, to be honest. Like we ended up finding some accidental B-roll in the footage, which was amazing and saved us a little bit. But that's tough in an edit to have nothing to cut away to if you need it. And I think even just thinking about shots where we're not just kind of stuck with an actor's performance on their face the whole time. So, in a perfect world, getting shots of hands, getting shots of, you know, backs of heads, getting shots from above, shots where we're just like we have options to cut to. Um should the performance not be exactly what we want. Not that that was the case, but it was something I was very aware of in the edit. And we got very lucky because all of the actors really were completely on top of their game, but I would just want to give myself more flexibility in the future.
Yeah, 100% agree. Before we move on, was there any one shot that was like your absolute favorite you were so excited about?
Yeah, the last shot. The last shot of the film is definitely my favorite. And that was one that came through to me very clearly when we were working on the shot list. Like, how do we kind of get this shot at the end where she is um like walking off kind of into the sunset on her own in a way that felt kind of poetic and summed up the entire film. And yeah, it's this kind of 180 wraparound shot. And yeah, that just came through very clearly when we were brainstorming, and we tried it and it worked. And I'm so pleased that that is the final shot of the film because I really do feel like it's the perfect ending.
Don't shy away from the tough shots because they, when you really nail it, it is so much more than the sum of its parts. Maybe just not, maybe every shot doesn't need to be super challenging, but
Yeah, I mean, and that's something else I was gonna say. Like, I'm not by nature kind of a bells and whistles director. Like I if the camera is moving, there needs to be a reason for me. I'm not just gonna do big camera movements because they look cool and they're fun to do. Um, there was a very specific reason that the camera needed to move on that final shot. Um, and it paid off. I was very happy to let the action on the screen kind of carry the forward movement for this project. But we didn't have a lot of big camera moves at all. The other thing I'll say is that once we have our shot list and we love it and we're so excited about it, then the producer makes the shoot schedule and it probably all has to change. So, yeah, tell us about the shoot schedule. That's so far out of my area of expertise. So I feel like I have basic questions like how do you know how long a script how do you know how long a script takes to shoot? And also, how do you know how much it costs? Because that also feels like I would have no idea how to begin thinking about that.
Yeah. So depending on the size of the production, how early various crew members come on board, it's usually the job of the first AD to put together the shoot schedule. But in these smaller productions that I've been on, when I've on certain productions produced and AD'd, or our AD is not, as we're really pulling our AD in a week out from shooting. Um, it does fall to me to put together the shoot schedule, or at the very least to put together the preliminary, the V1, the V2 of the shoot schedule. Um, First things first, the rule of thumb on a script is one page equals 1 minute of runtime. So if you have an 18-page script, you're looking at about an 18 to 20-minute film. And then in terms of how long it takes to shoot a page of a script, um, the sort of industry rule of thumb is an eighth of a page takes 15 minutes. So that's 2 hours for a page, which, depending on the length of your shoot, might be 5 pages in a day. Um, that's your average. But there are so many factors that go into that. What's your budget? Are these shots, if you're trying to make a short film in 2.5 days and it's a 20-page script, like you don't have the luxury of 5 pages a day. There are so many factors, like I said, that go into it, from how much dialogue is there? Is there a lot of complex choreography going on that's going to take a lot of blocking and rehearsing on the day, that's going to take multiple takes to make sure you're getting timing exactly right? How complex are the camera movements? For example, um, if you're shooting a oneer, which is, either one scene or even a whole project in one shot, that is incredibly, you have to have such precision, and it's going to take you a few takes to get that. And so you might spend an entire day on one scene to nail that shot. The lighting, is there some sort of special effect happening? Is this like a fight sequence? All of these things factor into, how much you're really able to cover in a day. But yeah, you work within the bounds of what you have. And
Yeah.
that does, like the production expands to fill the container. And then in terms of how much it costs, that is such a tricky and kind of impossible question to answer, because um, you get into, are you getting locations for free? Who is your crew? Are you pulling in favors, or do you have to pay everyone, their standard rates? Is this a highly stylized production where you need to bring in a production designer and get in, and like set dressing and wardrobe is incredibly important to the overall vision of the film, and those are things that you have to spend, put budget towards? Or is it a supernaturalistic sort of stripped down shoot where, like, as long as your locations hit off on what your vision is, like, you maybe don't really need any set dressing or very little set dressing.
I think we were quite scrappy on both of these approaches for this particular film. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So on this project, you know, we're shooting in a park. So there's not really much set production design, set dressing that goes into that, because you choose the park based on how it looks, and then you're sort of working with what's there. The coffee shop we chose, we were very particular about which of the several that we looked at we moved forward with, because we were basically working with what we had. With the exception of like, let's move this basket of bananas out of the way, or like that stack of bags of coffee, it just looks like some weird undefined blob in the background, so let's get that out of there and fill it with a plant instead. We were doing little things like that on set, but that is all to say, we chose to forego a production designer, prop master, set dresser on this project because we just frankly didn't have the budget to put to properly put towards that. And we took on some of that, all of it.
Yeah.
We put together briefs for the set dressing, breakout of props, exactly what we were looking for. And then you and I bought these things, returned to these things. You made some very charming get well cards for the Hunter Hospital room scenes, which there is a great insert of those cards, and it's so impactful. Um, but given the nature of this project and the resources available to us, and like how much we really needed versus working with what was already available to us, like that was one spot that it was easy to pare down.
This is what it is to make a short film. Like you figure out where you want to spend your money and where you don't, but ultimately where you don't spend your money, you're going to spend your time. So, with the production design, it was, yeah, we built a brief and figured out exactly what we needed to bring in for each location. Then you and I kind of divided and conquered what we would be ordering online. Like you had custom pill bottle labels printed and ordered pill bottles. I like you mentioned, I drew the get well cards. I found someone with a Game Boy because I wanted a Game Boy on Hunter's hospital nightstand. Even though we didn't invest our money into that section, we did invest a lot of our time and put a lot of planning into that process, which I think paid off. Because I think the hospital in particular needed to kind of feel more like a built out world. And I think we definitely got there with that.
The other element that is its own piece of the puzzle, its own department, but does move in parallel to this, is wardrobe. Can you speak a little bit to what your vision for wardrobe was, and then how we went about pulling wardrobe in that process?
Yes. So I wrote briefs for every character for what I envisioned them wearing, and then we ended up shopping in all of our actors' closets. I would send them the brief, they would send back photos with options of stuff that they had, and I would kind of go back and forth with them over text, over email to figure out exactly what we wanted them to wear on set. So again, where you're not spending your money, you're going to spend your time. And yeah, I mean, in the film, everyone looks very natural. I would say most of my energy and attention went to our two leads. I knew I wanted our lead character, Callie, in a red sweater. That was just the vision from probably even when I was writing the script, to be honest. And that was important to me because of the settings. I think I knew we were going to be shooting in the park in late fall. So I knew that we were going to have like yellows and greens and the blue sky, hopefully. And so I wanted a color that would really pop against that. And also, I think Callie has some anger in her, and that felt kind of representative of that. And then our little girl who approaches Callie on the park bench and is our other lead, I really wanted her outfit to be like a little chaotic, a little like unhinged, just to kind of represent where she's at, feeling a lot of grief. We know that her parents are also experiencing a lot of grief, so maybe they're not quite paying attention to what she's wearing, or helping her get dressed or anything like that. So, um, Eloise was in these bright pink, flower printed pants and a leopard print sweater and a pig puffy coat and like cool black graphic shoes. She was just kind of doing the most with her outfit. And I just wanted it to feel like she had gotten up and got herself dressed that morning. And I think that comes through really clearly.
Something I've noticed on this and other productions where, up to this point in my producing career, being on indie projects, we have almost entirely pulled from our actors' wardrobes, from our wardrobes, just supplemented with things that are available to us and not made any additional purchases, or made very few. And I've really seen with actors pulling from their own wardrobes, it is sort of an exercise for them to really think about what feels like something their character would wear.
Yeah, that's such a good point. There's some choices that the actors themselves inform, like Arcadia, the whole audition and rehearsal process had her hair just up in a clip. So when it came time to think about her hair and makeup brief, I was like, I just want her to stay in this clip because that's how she's been Callie this whole time.
Okay, so we've talked about finding your locations, hiring your crew, casting your talent, wardrobe, set dressing, shoot schedule, shot list. Uh, all of those pieces are in place. You are a week, 2 weeks out from principal photography. Your final step is bringing all of your actors together, having a table read, doing rehearsals. Can you talk a little bit about the rehearsal process?
Yeah, we had a table read. We had a table read kind of early on in the process. That was virtual. And then we had an in-person rehearsal with just our two leads, particularly because one of them was an 8-year-old, so wanted to make sure I had additional time with the two of them. And then we did the full cast, minus the people who couldn't make it, and we did that separate rehearsal with in person. So I feel like that's actually a decent amount of rehearsal for a short film. I mean, given that we had, we had two actors under 18, it was important that we were doing kind of that level of rehearsal. And again, because we didn't have a lot of time on set, it was really helpful to be able to say, remember that conversation we had about this? That's what I'm needing to see right now, as opposed to kind of introducing a note for the first time. And given how like intense the schedule was and how quickly things were moving and how much was going on around them, I think that was very helpful for them because they were kind of hearkening back to something that they had already kind of done successfully, as opposed to feeling like they needed to figure something new out while we were moving a mile a minute and they're surrounded by crew and it's freezing and all of these things. And I think also like it's so nice to just hang out with your cast before you're all on set and things are crazy and you're kind of building that trust more than anything, like you want to trust your actors that they understand their character and they're going to deliver, but they also need to trust you and they need to feel like you have a clear idea of what you're looking to accomplish and that you have their back and that you are supporting them in their journey.
I think, as you said, beyond just, ensuring that people feel prepared when they come to set because it's going to be such a quickly moving day, building that trust, building a, a communication cadence, especially with a child actor who is, pretty new at this, they are pretty new at this.
Every actor is going to need to receive communication in a different way that makes sense to them. And as a director, you are trying a note, and if that's not it, you got to figure out a different way to give that note in a way that lands for them.
I think there's also such opportunity for like organic conversation around who a character is and what their motivations are. And and like what they're thinking in a particular moment when you're in person at a rehearsal. I definitely saw some of that conversation happening across with all of the actors. That it also just gives them time to really continue working out in their heads who this person is and what's going on with them. Okay, so we've talked about the full pre-production process from start to finish. What would you say, what was your favorite part of pre-production? What did you find the most challenging?
Mm. I love rehearsal, honestly. Like I could just stay in the rehearsal process forever, happily. Getting to be in a space with actors really diving into the human condition, that's like my happy, happy place. I love that. Um, that's probably my favorite part. I think the most challenging part is just that it is relentless. Like you are there is something to be done. There is a major piece of the puzzle to be figured out like every single day. And it's just a lot of labor. And I think the last thing I'd say about pre-production is just that there really isn't one way to do it. There's really not a right or wrong way to approach filmmaking at all. Every project is different, every filmmaker is different. And this is how we did it for our short film, and we found a lot of success with it. But ultimately, I think any other new filmmakers, it's like, what makes sense for your project? Where do you want to be spending your money? Where do you want to be spending your time? Um, and kind of you have to figure out your own process, I think.
That has been such a learning, an important learning, and one I'm getting more and more comfortable with as time goes on as a producer. Like there is no one way to approach any project because they are all different, because you're never going to have the same story, the exact same crew, the exact same cast. And you have to figure out your process and what works for you, and just know that like there is no right and wrong answer. There are wrong answers, there are wrong ways to go about doing things for sure, but like there are a lot of right answers, and that's the beauty of it. The variety is that spice that makes it tasty.
Oh, yeah. And that's why you have to trust the process. That is why you have to trust the process.
Trust the process, your process.
That's your process. Yes, exactly.